wonderful panel discussion on New Education Policy 2020 and the future of K-12 segment. And for this, we have invited the most influential and eminent speakers from the education ecosystem, for which first I would like to welcome on board Mr. Vinesh Menon, who is also a moderator for this discussion. To give an intro about Mr. Vinesh Menon, he is the CEO of Ampersand Group, providing education, skilling, and consulting services. His trust with education sector began 8 years back, and he involved in various aspects that added value to the K-12 ecosystem. He has more than 25 years of experience and has delivered value to diverse industries. He has successfully engineered popular government programs to train and employ youth in Jammu and Kashmir and also in Bihar. He is also a writer and an avid speaker and is often seen delivering keynotes or chairing panel discussions at conferences and seminars. His views and thoughts have been featured in many leading publications. He has also been a jury member for Business World's 40 Under 40 initiative in the year 2017 and 2018, and he contributed to search for 40 leading entrepreneurs under the age of 40. Mr. Menon has recently become a lifetime donor and core contributor to the movement called Nexus of God. It's a pleasure welcoming Mr. Menon. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. It is Nexus of Good.
Nexus of Good. I'm really sorry for that. He has recently become the lifetime donor for and core contributor to the movement called Nexus of Good. And in the next one I'm going to invite in the panel is known for his innovation in crucial development and interactive pedagogy. He has been the instrumental to the innovations in curriculum in CBSE, which include frontline curriculum, communicative approach to teaching information technology, biotechnology, entrepreneurship, etc. He's a strong advocate of stress-free education, which is what much needed at this moment, and has initiated several steps in this direction. He has fashioned himself as a premier teacher trainer and in ushering change management in schools. His interests include philosophy, psychology, poetry, and literature. He has participated in several national and international conferences and presented papers on a wide variety of academic interests. He has authored several books for schools in science and information technology, and has also written books for teachers, academicians, and educational administrators. The three popular titles are Mindscaping Education, Case Studies in Classroom, Quality Spectrum, a School's Bandwidth. He has been awarded with numerous awards such as Vocational Excellence Award from Rotary Club of Chennai, Seva Ratna in Education from the Centenarian Trust Chennai, and Lifetime Excellence Award from Women's Delhi. And is none other than Mr. Balasubramanian. We are so glad to have you here, sir. Thank you so much. And next on board, I would like to welcome Dr. Suchitra Bhattacharya. She started her career as a teacher and has over 19 years of experience in teaching, administration, and management of schools, cross-cultural, multidisciplinary environment, which has made her the principal of reputed ICSE and CBSE schools in Kolkata and Delhi. And she is currently principal of Manav Rachna International School, Chamur, from February 2020. She has got her MPhil in English literature and she is a PhD in education, a trained classical singer and a Bharatanatyam dancer. Coming from the army fraternity, Dr. Suchitra always stood beside the students in border areas. One thing what we remember when we say about Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam would be dreams and also about the youngsters. Same way, Dr. Suchitra loves to spend time with teenage children and listen to their dreams very passionately. She is a keen writer and a social worker. As an educationist, she has been very active in various TED Talks and shared her views in other panel discussions on education policies and developments. She has also received many awards for her contribution to the society in the field of the education. She strongly believes that today's younger generation has immense potential and only need to be guided with smile, motivation, and understanding to get the best out of them. So it's my pleasure welcoming ever-smiling Dr. Suchitra Bhattacharya. Welcome, ma'am. And then next on board, the person whom I'm going to invite is a former state curriculum committee member of Government of Kerala. He is an accredited management trainer in IMG Kerala and also accredited management teacher at IMA Delhi. He's an academic counselor and project guide for MBA IGNOU. He is a management visiting faculty and trainer in various state, national level institutions. I should definitely mention that he is a recipient of Best Teacher Award from Government of Kerala. It's my pleasure welcoming Mr. Ashik KP. Welcome, sir. All right, on board I have a next person whose achievement when I received it was like for 4 to 5 pages, and for the want of time, I took so much time in cutting it short so that I can make it in half a page because he has done so much for the students, especially in terms of technology. He also began his career as a teacher in Haryana Education Department, and due to his innovative and extraordinary approach towards improving the learning outcome of the students, he was selected to work as a state program officer in Directorate of School Education. He has worked to strengthen the education system through his innovative initiatives. His initiatives in the field of ICT is really remarkable as he developed analog television and analog projector to display from mobile on wall. He developed a smart solution for mobile TV device which magnifies the screen of the mobile and is based on a simple principle, television without electricity and battery. It's great to hear about this innovation. His innovation in developing pedagogical tools of learning has been appreciated and awarded by various international organizations like UNESCO Paris, ADB, USAID, UNDP, and Helsinki University, Finland. He has developed concept of joyful learning, which has been successfully implemented in Haryana state. He has developed MIT Day Meal mobile app for Haryana school teachers. His work in the field of virtual reality is also remarkable. Devices developed by him were very smart. Low-cost solution of VR headstand are being utilized in schools of various countries like India, Africa, and Middle East. His efforts has also resulted in initiation of quiz clubs in government schools of Haryana. He has also contributed in authoring a series of books, journals, modules on education, and empaneled as educational specialist on various media channels. His recent work on improving the mental health of students of class 9th, students of rural and urban areas in government schools of Haryana is a milestone in itself. He has also been awarded so many times and he has received various institutions at Dignitaries Award and has also achieved the prestigious State Teacher Award by Honorable Governor of Haryana for his strenuous endeavors in education. So let's all welcome Mr. Pramod sir. Welcome, sir. All right. With that note, I would like to hand over the panel to Mr. Vinesh Menon to take it forward.
Okay. Thank you so much for those introductions. Good morning, everybody. I hope my voice is audible. Thank you, co-panelists, for being part of this very, very important discussion. Your time is precious, and I really value this time. And also really thank you to everybody who's joined this on a Monday morning, because normally you see a lot of webinars happening on weekends. And I see far more participation on a weekday morning. And that really shows that most of you who are here are very, very keen and interested in being part of sessions like these. I'd like to first, congratulate and thank Dr. Sahid Cholial, Irfana and the team of 3G Institute of Policy and Research for putting this together. I think it's from whatever I picked up, I think it's a very, very interesting 3 days that you all have had. My understanding is that there are more than 15,000 participants who have registered. And that really means 15,000 pairs of eyes and ears who are now going to be looking at us to understand this very, very important topic. And I think it is a very, very important topic, considering the kind of situation that we are in as a country on education. I'll go straight into the discussion itself. The national education policy was introduced somewhere among the pandemic. None of us even saw it coming, because for a long time it was in the draft sessions and there were a lot of ups and downs and to and fro's going on. And suddenly, when everybody was discussing about when schools have to open, online teaching, technology, etc., out came the NEP 2020. And this is very, very important and very, very critical for us, because one, I think as a country today, more than 25 to 30% of our population is going to schools. And that's a very, very high percentage of population that's going to schools. Very, very important. Second, I think the one big topic that is getting discussed these days is the fear of unemployment down the next decade. How everything is going to change, the ecosystem is going to change, artificial intelligence and machines are going to take over. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. There is this big fear going along. And a lot of times people even say that we don't even know what's going to happen over the next decade in terms of the kind of jobs and roles that are available. So I think this NEP document is directionally going to be addressing some of those issues as I understand. Number three, we happen to be in the middle of a pandemic that has really disrupted us for the last 4 months. Schools have shut. Almost every child who's supposed to be going to school and studying is actually doing online classes from home. In a way, they would say that school buildings are shut, school services is still on. And a lot of teachers have really risen up to the occasion to do a lot of things. And technology and edtech has suddenly started getting far more integrated into academia. And again, an important area for us to discuss as far as the new national education policy is concerned. This policy is probably critical for all the five pillars that govern education in this country: the government and the policymakers, the schools and the school management, the trustees, etc., the parents, the students, and the teachers. So I think there is it's a critical topic, and I think the more importance we give it, the better. A lot of NEP discussions have already happened. A lot will happen, and it's a discussion that needs to happen. The more number of discussions, the better for us to really understand this entire document inside out. I'm extremely thrilled to be, chairing and moderating this panel. This panel is different because what we have in this panel is one practitioner, a principal who's actually been on the ground, working with students, parents, interacting with the school, and that's the practitioner on the ground, and the rest of them are all, government representatives. There are folks who have been in the thick and thick of policy making as far as education is concerned in this country. So I think this combination can give us a pretty good insight, and that's how I'd like to describe this panel in a nutshell. With no further delay, I'm going to straight away get into the discussion now. I'm going to start with you, Mr. Chitra. I'm going to start with you because you are on the ground, you're a practitioner. And if you really look at the policy, one fundamental thing that it does is to really change the way that students are going to learn. It talks about how children should focus less on rote learning, go more into creative thinking, conceptual understanding. The whole idea is to really change the way that children absorb studies. And if you look at the earlier session, whatever little we saw of it, that is the generation that we're talking about. I mean, look at 18-year-old Zishan conducting a panel discussion today. I mean, that's the kind of change that we're going to see in the future generation. Now, my question to you is, when this policy came out, I'm sure you must have interacted with teachers, you must have interacted with parents. What is the general opening buzz or the opening reactions that are happening on the ground? I mean, have they really understood this policy? Do they welcome it? Do they see something which is exciting for their children? What are your views on that?
Pranam Subramaniam, sir. I have attended a number of sessions of yours, and it has always been very enriching. Good morning, dear friends who are with me on board and all those who are with us live. I'm honored to be part of such a wonderful discussion with such distinguished guests. Thank you so much for the nice introduction. Straight to here, if I hit the question, I would like to first say that policies can be made, policies can be documented, but it's the responsibility of each and every educationist, each and every principal, teachers, parents, and students to see that it is implemented, and only then it becomes meaningful. Like as you've said, Mr. Menon, that schools are closed. But in fact, buildings are closed, schools are not, absolutely. And the paradigm shift that has taken place in the education sector is commendable. To talk about the lockdown and then the NEP, today morning again, though it's general discussions always we keep having. Today morning again, I entered in one of my class 12, and I was just asking the students, are you aware of the NEP, what's there? This particular class I did not visit because virtually we keep visiting all the classes. Children are so much aware of it. That's fantastic. That's wonderful. They are aware, and some of the children are saying that it should have come 2 years back so that we could be part of it very much. So to talk of NEP, we can say it's a long-awaited document coming almost after 34 years. The policy is aiming to achieve 100% youth and adult literacy. Yes, it's aiming to increase the gross enrollment ratio in higher education, including the vocational education from which was maybe 28% in 2018, and we're expecting it to be 50% by 2035. And the policy, frankly speaking, envisages, as you've said, it's broad-based, multidisciplinary and holistic undergraduate education is what we are expecting, with flexible curriculum. It's a creative combination of subjects, which is amazing, and integration of vocational education and multiple entry and exit points. So in a nutshell, it's absolutely student-friendly And I suppose we will see the aim being fulfilled, that is universalization of the education from the preschool to the secondary level. It basically emphasizes the universal access to schools for all children in the next decade. And it stresses on the stoppage of dropouts. I think that is something which is amazing. And whenever you talk to parents, whenever you talk to students, they find it absolutely. It's, of course, it's too early to go in for an elaborate discussion with all the stakeholders. However, in the education sector, we all, the educationists, the teachers, the principals, we are all discussing that it is amazing. But yes, we have to see that it is implemented in the right manner, in a positive manner. Students will be very happy. In fact, they are very happy because of the because it aims to productive enlightenment, productive and empowered contribution to the Indian economy. And as said, the system emphasizes on experiential learning. Say, for example, we always focused on experiential learning. However, not many schools could implement because of the infrastructure, because of the policies. But I suppose now each and every school will go in for this experiential learning where the child can think critically, there can be problem solving, etc. Because the syllabus is shortened. Therefore, obviously, the children are very happy because they can be, they can see, they can give creativity in an everyday learning. In fact, teachers are also very happy.
Yeah, so I picked up that teachers are clearly very happy. Students seem to be clearly excited about this.
Absolutely.
How about parents? Now, the reason I'm asking about parents is because parents, unfortunately, what you've seen in India is that they, of course, the first 6, 7, 8 till the 8th standard, they're quite okay with children going through experiential learning and all kinds of, experimental kind of teaching. But after 8, they come under pressure because then the mark system takes over. Then we get caught into the same old rigmarole of marks taking charge. Now, do you think that they are beginning to feel that there is a little change happening in that, especially the board exams and all going through some changes?
The board exams, yes, they are a little confused. But what happiness I can see in parents is there will be no more that pressure that happens for a choice of subjects. Like here, the vocational trainings will be part of our syllabus now. So it's not going to be anyone who was not so good in studies are taking vocational subjects. Not so good in or very good in studies is only going for science. So there is always a peer pressure or pressure from the surroundings, which will diminish because here the child can choose any subject. The child can go in for vocational training from class 8 standard. So I suppose parents, as I said, not very many discussions had taken place. However, whomever I spoke to, I have found that parents are also very ready to accept this. They have become progressive in their thought process. Yes, if you talk of the education sector throughout, there might be places where people might take time. However, in the area that we are working, most of the schools, I think parents are becoming very, very progressive and they are liking. With the assessment, yes, they are a little concerned. That I suppose it's our responsibility to explain to them and make them feel at ease because it will take time for them also to accept.
Sure. Well, thank you. I think that's a wonderful opening start because you have given a very positive feel to this whole guideline that has come from the NEP, and it's heartening to know that all very critical stakeholders, which is the teacher, the student, and the parent, seems to be quite in sync with what the NEP is going to be doing for us. I want to now move to Dr. Balasubramanian, and sir, what do I say? I mean, everybody knows you. You have been around for so long. You've been what I love about you is that you've been over the years, you continue to stay connected with the evolving, ecosystem of education. I think you've seen it all right from the 50s. You've seen how the system has come out and evolved from the 60s. You've been part of the policy in 80s. I think 1986, I think you were part of it. And if I'm not mistaken, sir, I think you were really part of the whole 10+2 system that happened then. And now we are shifting from that system to the 5+3+3+4. And largely been designed to take care of the early years of a child, because a lot of proven scientific papers have come out that the first 6-7 years of the child is very critical as far as the brain development is concerned. So that's a welcome move. I'm very keen to understand your thoughts behind this. Do you think that this shift is going to make a significant change in the way our education ecosystem is going to evolve?
Thank you, Vinesh. I think that is a very, very important question. When you look at the conceptualization of a policy, it is largely a geopolitical social document. and therefore the ideas incorporated in a policy are contextual to the time when it is being done. So when we look at the 10 plus 2 system, that was an outcome of the Kothari Commission report, where the Kothari Commission envisaged that that this country needs a lot of workforce, and therefore a lot of thrust has to be given on vocational education. And therefore they prescribed what is called a core learning system up to class 10, and then diversification of learning beyond class 10, with an expectation that about 65% of learners from class 10 will move to vocational education, and the rest will go for the academic learning. But unfortunately, over the years, that has misfired, and we have not been very, very successful with the vocational education, because some kind of branding had taken about the superiority of an academic education over the vocational education. Therefore, there was a kind of a stigma, and possibly the support systems also were not adequate. As we moved across, when we came to 1986 policy, you will find that the thrust was on integration of ICT, because that was a time when we had Rajiv Gandhi as a prime minister and Mr. Narasimha Rao as HRM. And then the focus was on development of information technology and to empower this country as a technologically enabled competitor to the world. And therefore, that was the thrust there. When you move towards 2005, the national curriculum framework of 2005 was basically carved on the recommendations of the UNESCO document called, we called it Dellas report, where the 4 pillars of learning, which was given as a direction for the 21st century globally, not only for India, which said that the 4 pillars: learning to know, learning to do, learning to get together, and learning to be, as the 4 pillars. And therefore, the 2005 NCF was carved on that, with focus on globalization and taking the Indian competency over from India abroad. But now when you look at this new document, if you read the first vision document itself, vision statement, you will find that it is India-centric, and rightly so, because all across the world, there is a a great trust on promoting the the architecture and the industrial architecture of the respective countries to become global competitors. And therefore, I think it was a well-conceived vision for this one. Therefore, the 10 plus 2 system has survived for nearly 50 years, and there was a disruption was very much required, because the climate in the knowledge industry has fast changed today, right? The irrelevance of knowledge, the irrelevance of skills is more a problem than the relevance of skills, because the speed with which the knowledge is changing, it is becoming increasingly difficult to manage the education system. Therefore, we needed to focus on learnability of the learners rather than the learning of the learners. I think that is the focus of this particular document. It focuses on the learnability of the children, the learners, and therefore the curriculum opens up a lot in order. As Madam pointed out, multiple entry and exit points over there, choice of subjects, and I think this kind of open learning is very, very important, because when we were students, we probably had 80% of all our learning from schools and 20% of learning from outside the school. Today, with informal education dominating over, 80% of learning is from outside and 20% of learning is from the formal system. So the teachers have a problem in synergizing the formal learning with the informal learning over there. So this particular structure, and when you look at this 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4, it's a very important decision. I must place on record our appreciation. The thing is that we never bothered about 0 to 3 as an integral component of learning. The brain researchers of brain scientists have clearly said that the learning is prenatal. There are universities abroad where there are separate departments of prenatal cognitive learning, and therefore that they say that the learning of the brain is almost 3 times at the younger age as compared to the later age. Therefore, it's very important that the brain has to be nurtured, nursed, and empowered. And as such, the 0 to 3 years of document which will be prepared by the government, I think will be a very important document. I think the mass media, through mass media, they must take it to all parents, because it's not going to talk about how to teach the children, but how to keep the children emotionally and intellectually healthy. Then when you come to class 3 onwards, the focus has got to shift toward foundational literacy and mathematics over there. I think language and mathematics are fundamental to growth. Let us not link to any subject for that matter, whether he becomes a doctor or a scientist, whatnot. But fundamentals to existence is communication, literacy, as well as the mathematics, computation skills. I think that's where India has not done really well in the global competitive environment, and I think it has, been addressed quite well at this point of time. And then when you move towards, I think the term senior school and junior colleges have all been dropped out. Now, what happens is the classes 9 to 12, right, I think has been put as a single, mobile scheme over there. I think that's very, very important. That particular 3 to 14, is a progressive stage. And therefore, what is very important in this document is that the entire thought architecture of education, both on the knowledge domain and the growth domain, emotional domain, has been articulated to put in a particular shape. Lastly, it is not the policy, as Madam pointed out. It happened with 1986 policy also. It is not exactly what the policy says, but how, we transfer the policy into action. Normally, the proverbially we say, a bad workman fights with his tools, right? And so whatever be the policy, how we transfer it. So I think our mindset of schooling has to change. Schools will no more exist. They won't exist as infrastructures, but they will function as conceptual, learning systems. I've just concluded with a very small, input, which I got from a student, and that made me terribly thinking. When I was addressing a group of students of class 11 and 12 in a particular school, one student after my talk stood up and asked me a question, right? Sir, where do you buy your milk? I was surprised what silly question it was. He said, no, sir, please answer. I said, I bet from a milk booth. Then he said, where do you buy your medicine? I said, from my chemist shop. Where do you buy your cosmetics? I said, from my mall. Then he asked me a question. Sir, if you want medicine, you go to a chemist shop. If you want milk, you go to a milk booth. And for a cosmetic, you go to a mall. Why should I go to the same school for physics, chemistry, and biology? Can't I choose a school for one subject? And that's a future, right? Amazonization of education, I would call it rather. The ability of so the focus is going to be on learnability. Focus is going to be on, competency and skill. And that way, I think we should welcome this document.
Wonderful, wonderful. In fact, I must say, sir, that many a time, especially in the school ecosystem, and when you go to schools and when you talk to people, a lot of them say that, look, teachers who have been around for a long time are unwilling to make a change. I think you are somebody who will break that myth straight away, because you've been around for so long and you're so beautifully transcending through the changing times of education. You're just not sticking to the old way of thinking, which is fantastic. And especially your 80-20, 20-80 that you mentioned about how 80% is from outside. It's a brilliant line. So thank you so much for this very, very well articulated, thought process around this whole new format of education system. And I fully agree with what you're saying. We'll come back to you, sir, in a while. But having said that, I want to move to Pramodji. Now, Mr. Pramod Kumar has really he's in the thick of action. He is right now a serving officer inside the Haryana Education Department. And he's been around there for a while and he's seen what's happening. So while I completely endorse Dr. Balasubramanian's view that, there is a shift happening, 3-year-old, brain is going to be developing much faster rate those days. The government has also come out with a very interesting point in the NEP, which talks about bringing in, multilingual ways of teaching the child. So the government is slowly trying to tell that we don't have to get stuck with the old adage of only using English as a language. They're actually emphasizing and almost trying to say that the mother tongue could be the best way to kick off a learning process for a child. Now, this, in a way, while the thought process is very noble, but it has led to a lot of confusion in the ground. I think a lot of questions are being asked. Is this going to be imposed on us? What happens if I'm a Tamilian sitting inside a school in Delhi? and if I'm told to learn in Hindi vis-a-vis Tamil, how does that work? And what happens to the existing English medium schools? Is there a lot of these questions which are coming up, Pramodji? What is your, I mean, since you're part of the system and you must be obviously part of a lot of these discussions, what will you answer to someone who asks you this question? Pramodji?
Let me check if he's here.
Can you just check, please? I saw him here.
It's not showing. Let me check if he has got disconnected or something.
Okay, if he has, then I can.
All right, he has moved attendees. Let me promote him to panel. I think he had an internet fluctuation.
Okay.
So I'm sorry, sir. I think he would have been listening to you. Now I promoted him to the panel.
Okay.
Pramod sir, yes, you are in the panel now, sir. You can speak.
Pramodji, are you there?
Yes, I think I am audible now.
Yes,
Okay.
sir, we can hear you now, sir.
Thank you.
Oh,
Did you get to hear my question, sir?
Yes. If you please repeat, it will be good for me. But I think you are asking me about the three language formula or Hindi language or medium of Hindi or medium or English medium.
Yeah, I'll just summarize it once again. Basically, what
Please,
I'm only trying to
please,
say
please.
is that while clearly the NEP seems to be going in the right direction, a very interesting change has also been the guideline to start using multiple languages, especially in the early years till the 5th standard. So what they're really saying is that don't get stuck onto only English. Start using mother tongue. Start using vernacular language to teach your children, especially in the early years. Now, while this is a very noble change that has happened, a lot of people in the ground seems to be very confused. There are a lot of questions which are coming up. What happens if I'm in an English medium school? What happens if I'm a Hindi speaking person sitting inside a school in Chennai, or vice versa? What happens if I don't want to learn in a local language and I only want to learn in English? So people are asking these questions. Now, since you're in the middle of, you're right now serving officer in the Department of Education in Haryana, what would you answer to such questions? That is what I wanted to know.
Yes. Yeah, Vinesh. Vinesh. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to tell you that it's already written in the NEP draft that the word they use, preferably word they use in the section 4.11 multilingual and power of language. They have mentioned that the medium of instruction will be mother tongue up to the grade 5, preferably. So now everybody is manipulating and everybody is translating this section as per their need and as per their requirement. So first of all, we need to understand, as Suchitra was saying, that this is not an act. This document is not an act. This document is not a rule. This is a policy. And you know very well, policy is your plan of action. So it has been described in detail in earlier draft. Now it's another draft in a policy that how our teaching learning process and how our education will be guided in near future. So every state has liberty, every state has mandate, every citizen has mandate to go with this. So in our Haryana, we are constituting a committee and we are incorporating every stakeholder in this committee. Private school are very big partner nowadays and they are doing English medium school. They are working in English medium school. So medium of instruction is their English. So in one go, we cannot ask them that from today there will be no English medium from elementary or there will be no English medium from primary.
Pramodji,
from
sorry.
one day we will see
Pramodji,
what
थोड़ा
is
सा
happening
पीछे
in their
जाइए.
school. Another
Sir, just go a little behind. आपका internet connection थोड़ा unstable है. थोड़ा सा पीछे, it was much clearer.
Sir,
Yeah.
what I would suggest is he can turn off his video and speak so that audio quality would be better.
No, that's okay. He can just speak into the mic. Now
Okay,
you're okay, sir.
okay,
No,
okay.
now you're fine. Where you're standing is fine. You can just speak
Okay,
into the mic.
thank you. Thank you. So first of all, we need to see what is written in this policy draft. Every state has liberty. Every state has a freedom to divine or devise or design their own state policy. So state Department of School Education or Department of Higher Education will constitute their committee. They will ask all stakeholders like private school partner, parents, community, school leader, educationists, higher education institution, they will be member of that committee, and every state will design their own policy. If they are finding that medium of instruction mother tongue is appropriate, very good, they may go with that. If they are asking that private school will go medium of instruction with English medium, okay, they can go with that. First of all, every state will decide their public school policy, how they will go in their government school. So it's not a very hard and fast that from coming days there will be no English medium school, every school will be Hindi medium school, or every school will be mother tongue school. No, there will be a detailed consultation at state level, and every state will design their own policy. Another thing I would like to tell you, that there is a big timeline. There is a big timeline in this policy. So on the basis of that timeline, every state will design and every state will formulate their policy, and on the basis of that, they will design their own rule, and on the basis of that, the next education scenario will go in the state. So making this big hue and cry that there will be no English medium school, there will be every school will be mother tongue school. No, it's not. It's very hurry. It's not so fast. So every state is going to design their own policy on the basis of that recommendation, and it's very clear in that preferably. They use the word preferably. So wherever possible, you can go with that.
Wonderful. No, that's really reassuring. So what you're really saying, Pramodji, is that this is really going to be centered around the child and the parent. That really is the real customer or the real beneficiary of this whole process, right?
You are right. You are right, Sajid. Earlier, I told you that, Vinesh. Earlier, I told you that this policy is child-centric. This policy is student-centric. This policy is vocational-centric. This policy is only and only student-centric. So everything, whatever written over there is student-centric or child-centric. So on the basis of need, on the basis of interest, on the basis of requirement, every state will formulate their plan.
Wonderful. No, thank you. I think this is very reassuring for all those who have asked this question. In fact, I can see some messages saying, thanks for the clarification, Mr. Pramod. So you can imagine how many people are having this little doubt in their mind. And yes, I agree that words like wherever applicable and preferable are very strong and important words to try and get this going in the right direction. Thank you so much. I'm picking
Vinesh,
up a word from you. Yes.
Vinesh, we need to see the psychology behind this idea. Psychology is that in the early stage, the conceptual clarity is very much adaptable if we teach or if we guide the student in their mother tongue. Because if we see in Haryana, we speak Haryanvi, we read and write in Hindi, our official work in English, and we pray in Sanskrit. So we are using 4 languages in our surroundings. So students are speaking and listening Haryanvi, but they are not reading and writing Haryanvi, Hindi.
Right.
Our all state level administrative work in English, or our religious practices are in Sanskrit, or for Muslim it's in Urdu, or for Sikh it's in Gurumukhi. So earlier we have this type of culture. So it is the psychology behind this, that if we teach the conceptual clarity to a student in his or her mother tongue, they understand it well. So this is only the idea behind. If a school go with 2 language formula, no problem. If they go with mother tongue as well as English, no problem. If they go with 3 languages, like once is dialogue, another is language, and 2 language, no problem. So we need not to worry about this. Every state will design their own policy, and on the basis of that, they will go further. Thank you.
That's very, very heartening. And you're right. Education is a state executing subject, right? Although the policy comes from the center. So I'm just hoping that every state Department of Education thinks and acts on the lines of what you're saying. But I'm picking up a very important point of view, which is the one particular word called timeline. And with that, I want to go straight to Mr. Achik. Sir, if you're there, I think, while we have discussed so many things right now, what is perhaps most critical right now is the timeline, and therefore the real timeline around how teachers are going to be trained to really undergo this shift from the old way of teaching to the new way of teaching. Mr. Achik, are you there? I hope you're there. Sir.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So my question was that, and I think the NEPs also talked about setting this whole. There's a national professional standards of teachers that they want to set up by 2022. Now you've really been in the space. You've also received the Best Teacher Award from the Government of Kerala. You're advising IGNOU. So who better than you to really understand the mind of a teacher and to really help us? And if you really look at the country today, we've got more than 9.5 million teachers. So how do you really start to make this big shift and change in the minds of these teachers? And especially in an era where today, most of the government teachers, at least I know, are coming for these 2 sessions every year of what is called a teacher training program, which extends for X number of days, and then they go back. So how do you really make that shift from that kind of a situation to what is called a continuous professional development of teachers?
Thank you, Vinesh, for asking such a brilliant question to me. So first of all, I thank Dr. Shahid also for inviting me to this mega webinar on career guidance. I'm so happy to be a part in this program which discuss an important topic in NEP 2020. Yes, the former faculty panel member said, policies are the dreams to implement in future. Policies are the vision for realization. But we are launching this policy after 30 years. Some little bit of changes happened in 1992 where PM Narasimha Rao was the Minister of HR. As an academician, I could see so many changes in this vision paper. I congratulate it. But whether it will be practically possible, need a very good strategy and action plan. I don't know how long it works. Because one of the beautiful quote from Swami Chinmayananda, vision plus action is called transformation. Vision minus action is either imagination, or action minus vision is a confusion. So when it go to a transformative stage, or when the policy to be realized, I don't know, a clear-cut strategy is very important. As the world is changing very fast, as you rightly said, where machines are dominating the human brains, we should frequently update the educational concept, learning, evaluation strategy, etc. Because the coming era is called the era of disruption, where 80% of the job are being obsolete. So what I am telling is, with regard to your particular question about the teacher development through a continuously professional development system, what I'm telling that this policy very focus on the teacher in the nerve center. So every system, teacher has an important role in this, in the quality, and teacher should be empowered. We have to test their efficiency up to the expectation of the customers. Performance are to be measured and appraised. But the problem is how it will work. The policy clearly state the methodology that there should be a setting up of the national standard, and the competencies should be measured. We have to continuously practice it. Whether it will be practically possible or not is one of the most important doubt I have ever since when I went through the National Education Policy 2020. Because, for example, first you take the setting up of a national standard. How you can set up a national standard for the all teachers in this vast country is one of the most important question. Because I am doing a research for the last number of years on competency gap bridging analysis in the teaching and the training process. So I know very well that it would be very difficult to set a particular or a national standard for the teacher, because the aim of the teacher, as Dr. Balasubramaniam sir said, education is not only for employment or for acquiring the knowledge, but for molding the child to live together happily in the society. So than the employability, we have to impart so many things, value, system, courage, etc., etc., etc. to them. They must be capable enough to do any employment or any activity without depending others, happily, by considering the society in a more ethical and value way. It is beautifully narrated in the principles of the policy. At the same time, how in that scenario, how you can set up a national standard is one of the most important question I can ask you, because it is very difficult. because the national standard means the teachers are different, the students are different, their culture is different, the quality is different, the language is different, their socio-economic background is different. So in these varieties, how you can set up a national standard is the first important gray area that I am not criticizing it. There should be a clear-cut strategy and action plan for this. But at the same time, the society is changing tremendously. So how we can cop up these changes with this process? That is the first question. Second, regarding the competency of the teachers, the policy said that once we set up a national standard, we have to assess the competency at a national way through national institute. It is very difficult. One way it is not possible because education is in the concurrent list, so state is getting enough chance. So when we put a plan and then to the states, and then the states decide, it will take more time, and the budget is also a very important constraint. Competency gap bridging exercise is a difficult process, because we cannot adopt the total quality management system, because we are not creating the products, we are not creating a particular output, and we are not doing a machinery work or factory work. We are molding the children, we are capable them enough to live happily together in the society. So that is very important thing, that for a competency measurement practices, first of all, we must have a competency framework, then we have to assess the performance, we have to appraise the performance. So the budget is a constraint, the time is a constraint, and so many constraints are there. If it is very easy to do the strategy, or if we take time for that, definitely it will be work out. But there are so many gap between what I am saying is the policy vision and the actions.
Right. No. This is very useful, and thank you. And but you're definitely a believer that teachers should be assessed. There should be an appraisal system. One needs to know who's a good teacher, who needs to be given more training. And you're also, as what I picked up is that you're also a strong proponent that, if a teacher wants to, let's say a primary teacher today wants to go and teach in the secondary class, there should be some method to get the teacher to understand how to move into that framework. So that whole continuous professional movement and getting into the next stream should be encouraged among teachers, isn't it?
That is what I said. Competency should be measured, and we have to set some standard. I have no doubt. But
how it is to be done is
it is the difficult thing, because it requires time. You know that even now, nearly 40% of, except Kerala or like that, even now, majority of the people are out of the things, and that even the institution has no internet and other things. So how we can do a national framework for the empowering of the teachers? That is the problem I am asking. Okay.
Point taken. No, that's very valid. So just a quick one request to all the panelists to talk into the mic. I'm saying some messages saying that the audio is not very clear. So that is just a request I have for everybody. But otherwise, I think very, very valid points are. I'm just going to once again go back to you, Pramodji, and especially in light of Pramodji, can you hear us? Pramodji? I think Pramodji's audio and video is frozen.
I am a little impatient on talking for the teacher's side, whatever has been discussed.
Okay, we'll just come to you, ma'am. I'll just come to you. I just want to get one little insight from Pramodji. I don't know if you've been hearing us. You've been hearing Mr. Ashik talk about how this whole teacher's competency has to be evaluated, and teachers have to go through a lot of, and he's really backing this whole standards platform being set for teachers. But he's not sure how it is to be done. Now, I know that in Haryana, you have done a lot of work on teacher training and teacher continuous professional development. In fact, you use technology a lot, and you have those technology platforms which have started to help in changing the way teachers have to be trained. So is that working? Is that useful? Are you having problems in getting this whole technology into the hinterland of Haryana?
Vinesh, I think we need to do a lot of work in this, because all the state governments are not ready.
Sir, थोड़ा सा mic के अंदर बात कीजिएगा. It's not very audible.
Hello.
Yeah. Yes. Please go ahead.
Yes. Now it's audible.
Yeah, better.
Yes. So I think all state government are not ready with this issue. They need to work a lot because technology is nowadays not a part of regular teacher training. We need to download. We need to as we see the Diksha portal, and we are trying our teacher to go to Diksha portal to do online teacher training, but they are not so capable or so to do online teacher training. All diets and BRC, CRC Central, as well as SCRT, they need to be equipped with the technology, and they need to be well strengthened so that they may get appropriate infrastructure to provide the online teacher training program.
One point I can add you, Dr. Vinesh, that we have a central standard system called like NEBT. How many institutions enrolled in the NEBT system? Very little. Only 5 to 6% of the private institutions. The remaining government institutions are not even now in the list of NEBT. That means that system for measuring the.
Sir, you're on mute, sir. Sorry.
Okay, is it okay?
Yeah, I heard you. So no, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just going to quickly run to Dr. Suchitra because she's been waiting to say something. I think as a teacher, as a principal, I think she's been desperate to say something on this area of teacher training. So, ma'am, what are you trying to pitch in on this topic?
Absolutely. First, I would like to say there are a few questions that's coming. So I was getting a little impatient when it came to the teacher. The paradigm shift that is taking place now with the lockdown, I think this speaks a lot how much teachers can adjust, how much teachers are learning, and how much they have to do it because they can't take a risk. We are dealing with the future generation. We are dealing with hundreds of students. And therefore, a little bit of lackadaisical attitude or a slow motion will never work. Teachers are constantly at par with whatever is the requirement. Secondly, this policy that was made, I think many a times we as educationists also have been asked to give a draft. So it has been done talking about like taking everyone's views, and implementation is on us. We have to implement it. As Mr. Pramod Kumar said, that it is a policy that has been made and which I initially also agreed. We need to take it. We need to take it forward. And regarding the teachers training, I think we are as it is. We have to keep pace with the future generation because we are teaching children. We are preparing children for such jobs which has not been at all established. We have never thought that we could meet on such a platform. So teachers training is a continuous process, whether NEP comes or not. So continuous process where the teachers training will have to go on. It is going on, and frankly speaking, excellent. The fittest, the survival of the fittest. If you are updated, if you have received the latest training, you are in the system, or else you are out. That is something which I wanted to mention because teachers will have to. There is no compromise on the learning of the teachers. We cannot make them sit. Frankly speaking, the private schools they do it. Even the government schools, it's very, very surprising the amount of work that the paperwork they do, the documentation that they do. I mean, it's amazing. We have a craze that yes, we put our children in. I myself am a principal of a very reputed private school. However, even the government schools are doing so much of training, so much of changes in the curriculum. So I feel with this new education policy, with the new picture that we've got, the framework that we have got, I think we can do wonders in the education sector. And there are people who keep discussing that, yes, how will the three languages, the different languages help? He's very well said that there is no pressure. It is mentioned that there is no pressure on a child. It is left to the school. It is left to the parents. It is so flexible.
Sure.
So I suppose teachers training will be taking place, and it's going to take place rapidly. And we will definitely do a wonderful job when implementation comes into consideration. Only thing is that mindset is required. Mindset of the students, mindset of the parents, and the environment. I think we'll go a long distance, and it's going to be a very, very positive leap in the education system of today. Thank you.
No, thank you. That is a very, from a lens of a principle, that has been very, very useful. Thank you so much. But at the same time, this is where I want to go back to Dr. Balasubramaniam. Sir, you've also really been training teachers, and like ma'am was saying, and like Mr. Kumar was also saying, teachers are very varied. States are varied, right? You have teachers in the private space, you have teachers in government schools, and what the government has really done, or rather what the NEP is also planning, is to really set up. They're planning to set up subject-wise committees to really start dealing with the implementation of the NEP, because everybody's been talking about implementation of NEP. So when they set up these subject-wise committees, do you think, and they intend to also include representatives from various ministries, do you think they're doing this to take care of every state's requirement? Are they trying to do this to exactly respond to the kind of queries that have been put up by Suchitra ma'am a while back and Mr. Ashik some time back? Does it answer some, or will it answer some of the questions or the points that Mr. Pramod Kumar said, that while Haryana is doing it, maybe some other states are not doing it? What are your views on this, sir?
Yeah, actually, the collective wisdom is a very important thing in terms of implementation of policies. And therefore, constitution of committees to deal with specified concepts are very much required. That's how any organizational structure exists, not through individual, wisdom, but through the collective wisdom. And that collective wisdom facilitates the needs of different geographies, different economies, and therefore I think the inputs of the people from different walks of life is very much important. As one who has been with the board, I have seen that operable, and I think we should welcome that. That's a one thing. Okay. But one point which I would also like to say as a response to what others have been talking is that we are in no more a society where somebody can come and go on training us, because remember, knowledge education is basically a dynamic subject. Knowledge is supposed to be getting exhausted every 6 weeks. Therefore, if NCERT or other organizations start training, they will take 5 years to do that. Teachers are required to engage in self-learning. Please remember, I have to go into my own website and then start following it up. Okay, right? I think there's some interruption. Let me tell you one thing.
We can hear you.
Yeah.
Please carry on.
Let me tell you one thing. Two important requirements of the teachers today. One is that professionalism. As a matter of fact, we had been dealing with education in a little unprofessional manner. So through this policy, we have to set up a professional thinking for the teachers. Number two, the learning has got to be absolutely self-learning for the teachers, with boards, whether state governments should create platforms by which they can learn. Because if you are going to train a teacher through certain specific programs, you will find the knowledge is totally getting outdated. Friends, I just would like to finish with only one observation. As an educator, when I read two books in the recent past, I felt like an earthquake in the higher Richter scale. One was the future of everything. The other was the future of mind. The future is fast, urban, tribal, and universal. Therefore, you have to keep cope. Educators should run one extra mile compared to other industries, and I think that's where the success of education system lies. Thank you.
Absolutely, sir. Very rightly said.
Thank you. I think that is very useful. But then I want to actually take a point, a leaf out of what you just said, and ask not only you, but I really want to ask you, Mr. Ashik and Mr. Pramod Kumar, especially because all three of you have been part of the government and the education space. All this that you're talking about will require money. Okay, and the fact is that currently the education ministry, the percentage to GDP is about close to 3% odd. That's the kind of money that is being spent on education. They have been talking about taking it up to 6%. Now 6% is something that they decided way back in 1960s. I think much somewhere during the Kothari Commission. Now I'm told by most of the government functionaries and machineries that 80% of the budgets that they have go into salaries, and the rest of them goes into purely administering the school. So where is the money for innovation? So if you're talking about whatever you just mentioned, Bala sir, that self-learning has to be an important way to do it. That means self-learning would mean you'll have to have content, good content. You'll have to have a platform to access that content wherever you are. You have to start having an interactive session to understand what this content means. Now somebody has to start allowing EdTech to grow, EdTech to spread into all these places. So I just wanted a quick 2-minute thought of yours, Bala sir, and I'd really like the thoughts of Mr. Ashik and Mr. Pramod Kumar after that.
I think it's not 6%. It's only whatever be the money. Effectivity of use is more important. I think there's a lot of wastage in education. I think we need to prune the way that we spend on education and put them into very productive resources, inputs. I think that's very important.
Wonderful. What about you, Mr. Pramod Kumar? What are your thoughts?
Vinesh, as far as the 6% of GDP on expenditure on education is concerned, it's a wonderful idea, but I don't think Government of India as well as all states are capable or eligible to expand. If I say about my state, we have already started working on that. We have allocated 50% of total budget. Listen, 50% of total budget of Haryana this year allocated to education. So it's a good idea.
50%, 50.
Yes, 15.
Okay.
Yes,
Thank God.
15.
Okay.
15% of total.
Yeah.
Sorry, 15% of total budget this year allocated to education, and we our Chief Minister is very much committed to increase this. But as far as the 6% of total GDP is concerned, if we see, I have a booklet with me and I'm watching the expenditure on budget of last 5 years. Surprisingly, it's going down. I don't know why. I don't know how, but it's going down. In last 6 years or in last 5 years, if you see the allocation of budget to the states, it's going down. Another question you have raised wonderfully, that expenditure on total budget of salary. If I say about my state, 81% budget goes to salary. Listen, 81% goes to salary, 7% goes to scholarships, 5% go to midday meal and free entitlement of RTE. So you can imagine what is behind. So how you think, how you develop the infrastructure, how you develop good school, how you develop smart school, how you develop digital school, it's a big question. But again, I am saying that we need to rethink, we need to plan, and we need to plan in every field, on teacher training or development of new school, but we need to think about budgets also. Thank you.
Right. I think that's very 15% is good. And I think the very fact that you have the numbers at the top of your fingertips shows that you're tracking this very closely. And clearly you want to get some more money for provisioning for innovation, technology, etc. That's nice to hear. Mr. Ashik, you want to add something to this?
Yeah, it will work out if the government takes serious attention for that. For example, in Kerala, when we implement the National Skill Qualification Framework for the entire vocational higher secondary schools of Kerala, government of Kerala, with their strong initiation, has taken the fund, has given the fund, and we have done the training programs for all. My question is whether we need to set up a national standard is my concern. Because as Dr. Balasubramanian said, the efficiency of the teacher is concerned with three important inputs: knowledge, skill, and attitude. So this may be vary from place to place. So a regional, based on the local needs, we have to empower the competency. That is the beautiful thing. When we empower the competency through that way, definitely we can empower the teachers. Teachers empowerment is very important. Teachers training is very important. At the same time, who fixed the standard is the important question.
Right. No, I think this has been so useful. In fact, there's so much more we can talk, but I think, we've got about 10-12 minutes to go, and we'd like to answer a few Q&A also. But I'm just keen to understand from all of you, and starting from you, Dr. Suchitra, if you could just take about a minute or two and just give a quick summary or a closure of what you think of the national education policy. Just a summary statement. Is it a plus? Is it a minus? Is it something that you think is in the right? Just give us a closing statement of yours.
Absolutely. I mean, definitely, I would say that this is a wonderful recapitulation of the new policy that has come with the new changes is an excellent idea. And as said, I'll once again stress on the fact that it depends on how much we implement. Like I was just going through the question, one particular person wrote that regarding life skill, that children have not been evaluated. We have been giving grades, and that is the reason why this has been imposed. Now we are going to go into vocational training, we are going to go into life skill classes, and definitely it's going to be very, very beneficial. Best thing about it is the choice of subjects that we have given the liberty for the students to choose. I think children will now get their choice subjects, and that will take them with full positivity and definitely with good result. Ultimately, that's what we want. To talk about the teachers training, again, that's our responsibility. We have to ensure that we are updated, and how we are going to do it now, we need to definitely have constructive plans. But the policies, if it's followed, if it's implemented, it's going to take us ahead, and our students, Indian students, will be pretty much at par with whatever we talk of the foreign university curriculum, the foreign curriculum, because this breakage, what has been brought in, and of course the credits that the children will carry, I think these are all full of positivity and very, very progressive. We need to see that implementation is done in a perfect manner. That's all that I have to say.
Wonderful.
Mr. Menon, sorry to interrupt. Actually, we are running short of time. Our plan is up to 12 o'clock for this panel discussion. So I'd request you to make sure that...
We started at 11:30, sir. So we will need our 60 minutes. Unfortunately, we would have loved to close it at 12 if we had started at 11. But the earlier panel went on to 11:25. And therefore, it's only fair that for a topic like this, we will need another 20 minutes, 10 minutes. Thank you. So I would just quickly understand from Mr. Pramod Kumar, what is your closing statement, sir, on the NEP?
देखिए एक बहुत अच्छा डॉक्यूमेंट है विनेश, मैं बताता हूँ जो राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट आया उस समय भी लोगों ने बहुत हल्ला मचाया, लेकिन राइट टू एजुकेशन एक्ट ने कितना जबरदस्त तरीके से इस देश में सुधार किया है। ये बहुत शानदार ड्राफ्ट है। हम लोगों को उन चीजों के ऊपर बात करनी चाहिए जो बहुत अच्छी चीजें हैं। जो इवैल्यूएशन रिफॉर्म को लेके, जो बोर्ड एग्जाम को लेके जो चीजें आई हैं, असेसमेंट को लेके जो चीजें आई हैं, ये पिछले 30 साल से इन चीजों का इंतजार किया जा रहा था। हम ऐसा मानते हैं कि ये बहुत अच्छे तरीके से डॉक्यूमेंट जो है आने वाले समय को जो है मदद करेगा। हम लोग इतनी जल्दी में क्यों है? देखिए इसकी टाइमलाइन देखिए। कुछ चीजों के लिए ये पहली बात तो ये है कि ये इट विल स्टार्ट फ्रॉम 1 अप्रैल 2021। उसके बाद कुछ चीजें 4 साल में होंगी, कुछ चीजें 5 साल में, कुछ चीजें 2030 में होंगी। तो हम लोगों को बहुत ज्यादा जल्दी करने की जरूरत नहीं है। सबसे बड़ी बात है नेशनल करिकुलम फ्रेमवर्क, इट विल बी अपडेटेड एवरी 5 ईयर। इट्स ए वंडरफुल आइडिया। हम इस समय 2005 के करिकुलम के साथ चल रहे हैं, उसके ऊपर तो कोई बोल नहीं रहा है। अब नई चीजें आ रही हैं, हम लोगों को उन चीजों का स्वागत करना चाहिए। और रही बात जहां तक बजट की, हर राज्य सरकार को इसके लिए बजट का इंतजाम करना पड़ेगा। हर राज्य सरकार को वो चीजें प्रोवाइड करानी पड़ेंगी। इसमें बिल्कुल भी ऐसी चीजें नहीं है कि हम इसको कहें कि इसका भगवाकरण हो रहा है, इसमें संस्कृत आगे आ रही है, इसके अंदर राज्यों का तुष्टीकरण होगा, ये अंग्रेजी भाषा को खत्म कर देगी, ये वोकेशनल ले आएगी। और ये जो है ये बहुत अच्छा डॉक्यूमेंट है। मसला क्या है कि सब लोग पूरे डॉक्यूमेंट को पढ़ते नहीं है। इस पूरे डॉक्यूमेंट को पढ़ें तो हमें एक एक चीज समझ में आएगी। ये बहुत अच्छा डॉक्यूमेंट है और आने वाले 10 साल में एक बहुत अच्छी दिशा देगा। थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Thank you. Thank you. I think some of you who have not, who got a little challenged in understanding Pramod ji, what he's simply saying is that this is a good document in the right direction, has all the right ingredients to make this country have the best of children going forward. Mr. Ashik, would you like to just give your views, and then I can go to Dr. Balasubramanian to wrap up the session.
Okay, there are so many highlights in this policy. I will tell one by one. One is the uniformity in pre-primary school. There should be a uniformity in pre-primary school everywhere, because so many pre-primary schools are conducting below the standard and above the standard, etc. So the uniformity is very good. Then up to 6 years of age, they should study mother tongue, reading, writing, numerical. Mother tongue with maths is a very good thing. And the school integration of arts, science, extracurricular, socials, etc. also good. And more chances are given for open schooling, 3-language formula, core values, and the formative assessment. Then the summative assessment is a very appreciable thing. Teacher empowerment is they highlighted. No transfer is one of the beautiful idea, because every time when the teachers are transferred, definitely they cannot impart the values and culture. These are the highlights. But at the same time, there are some gray areas. For example, whether the 6th standard is enough to capable enough to give vocational education is one of the important problem. And earlier we have a focusing on learner-centered approach. Gradually, when it turned to teacher-centered approach, I have a doubt. It should be it is immature now to say about that. But when we go through the policy, we can see. And if there is no separation between curricular and extracurricular activities, we can impart anything after 6th standard, because we are saying that we have to inculcate the spirit, the culture of India, etc. But at the same time, in the policy document, it is stated that ancient culture is even more important. Ancient culture is sometimes based on mythics or other things. So modern culture, the culture of Dr. Maulana Abdul Kalam Azad, culture of Ambedkar is not including that. That should also be come. And I think this policy has taken from United States and other things by changing the worldwide scenario. But the federalism is not seen in so many areas. The right to education strongly give the right of the child. So it is emphasized it. These are the important concern I have. And earlier we have 4 formula: access, equity, quality, and affordability. The new policy said the Prag, Jnana, what I can say, wisdom is the 3 area. So this should be discussed. And what I'm telling is, we have to take a lot of work. National curriculum framework should be given to states, and then automatically the society and the world is changing. So it should have launched 6 years back. That is my opinion. Okay, anyhow, happy this happened. I congratulate. We can take it in the positive sense.
Thank you. Thank you. And Dr. Balasubramanian, if you could just wrap up with your...
As a matter of fact, I would not like to discuss on what all has been said. But 3 points which you have missed in the whole document is: number 1, that this particular document focuses largely on digital learning, and therefore there are strong references about the blended learning of the future. It also talks about the artificial intelligence and virtual laboratories for the future. It also talks about paradigm shift in assessment, I think, which is very, very critical. You know, we have been using the authority of the teacher to fail our people rather than to encourage knowledge. 30%, 35% pass. That means that we have acknowledged 65% of ignorance. I think that's a very wrong statement. From minimum levels of learning, we need to go for maximum levels of learning, and that's what the policy focuses. Last but not the least, the 3 paradigms of assessment: self-assessment, peer assessment, and teacher-led assessment have been put across this policy. I think that will redefine the way we look forward to education. Thank you very much.
Wonderful, wonderful. I think this is fantastic. I would just want to conclude, and I understand on paper we have exceeded time, but a discussion like this really cannot happen in such a short time. We need to keep having more and more discussions, as the people on the panel have been talking about. In fact, I want to thank a gentleman called Mohammed and many others who have been saying, allow the session to go on because it's of national importance. And that's the truth. It's of national importance. And we need to have many, many discussions around this. I would request all of you to please take a link of this entire discussion and other links and keep going through it. Because please understand, this is a policy that's come out after 3 decades. It's come out after 34 years. I'm sure the average age of the people on this, on the audience would not have even known about a national education policy because they would have been much younger. Number 2, as Pramodji said, please read every line, every document. Do not be like this big elephant where you just touch the legs and the ears and the trunk and not really see the elephant in its entirety. Read it and do not let that blind you by having half-baked information, especially in today's scenario where social media is so strong and fake news keeps going around. It's important that none of you get the wrong understanding of this entire policy. And thirdly, I'm extremely happy that we are living in an era where topics like this is now becoming a national discussion area, because all TV channels, a lot of webinars like these are starting to discuss it. So all those of you really keen on seeing a new India happen, please start listening and understanding what all of us are talking and what many other people are talking, and post in your questions, share your queries into emails of ours. You can take that from the organizers of this particular platform. But otherwise, it was a brilliant session. I think I enjoyed talking to all of you. Thank you so much, everybody, for putting in your points. I'm sorry if I had to sometimes prevent you all from completing your thought because of paucity of time. But appreciate everybody, and thank you all the participants and all the audience who's been part of this wonderful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. And really, we had a powerful panel discussion on New Education Policy 2020 and the future of K-12 segment. And I'd like to sincerely extend our thanks to Mr. Vinesh Menon, Mr. Balasubramanian, Dr. Suchitra Bhattacharya, Mr. Ashik, and Mr. Pramod Kumar. And also we have an e-certificate for you all for spending your valuable time with us on this beautiful Monday morning. So can we have this certificate, please? So first we would like to honor Mr. Vinesh Menon with this e-certificate, and also we'll be emailing it to you. Please kindly accept this, sir. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And then we have a certificate for Mr. Balasubramanian.
It's Dr. Balasubramanian, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. Balasubramanian, sir.
Dr. Balasubramanian.
And next, sorry, sir. And thanks to Dr. Balasubramanian, sir, for his valuable time along with us. And next, we'd like to give the certificate to Dr. Suchitra Bhattacharya. Thanks for your time, ma'am. And next, we'd like to honor. Next, we'd like to thank Mr. Yes, ma'am. Welcome, ma'am. Next, we'd like to thank Mr. Ashik, sir,
Thank
for
you.
this certificate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And next, we'd like to thank Mr. Pramod Kumar, sir. Thank you so much for valuable time to all the panelists. And we really had a great time. And definitely, audience would be looking forward for the YouTube version as well. And they'll be looking forward for it. Thank you once again.
Join the mission, build India to serve. Join the mission, build India to serve the world.
Join the mission and build India to serve the world.
Join the mission, build India to serve the world.
Join the mission, build India to serve the world.